In just a few minutes. If you want to test your sound, feel free.
Can you hear me, Julie? Catherine Chart.
Yes, I can. It's a little soft, but
yeah, I'm not speaking loudly. Okay.
There we go. Yes, I can. Great.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'll mute myself.
Wonderful.
Can you hear me okay, Julie?
Yes, Ginger. Great. And I'm gonna go ahead and mute or turn off my camera here, Ginger, and we'll let you be the focus. Looks like we have a couple more minutes.
Yes. It is 2 o'clock on my computer. Just want to make sure that everyone is ready to go. We are broadcasting now. It looks like we have the majority of the work group that's joined already. Can you confirm, Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm still taking roll call. It looks like we have I have one more to let in right now. Let me look. It looks like we have about 25 folks on the meeting.
Okay.
But I'm still doing roll call, but yeah, it looks like majority have signed in.
Okay, terrific. Well, let's get started then. I just want to provide you with a wonderful and warm welcome. As always, we very much appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules, especially during these strange days of COVID-19. This work is as important as ever. Also, just want to give you a friendly reminder to mind your mute. If you are not speaking, will you please press your mute button so it doesn't interrupt the flow of the meeting, or the sound. Any interruptions we're hearing could interrupt the flow of the meeting. So on that, I would like to take a moment to orient you on Teams. It's very possible that most of you are used to a Zoom environment, which is makes sense. Many people are using Zoom. What I'd like to do is show you what it looks like in Teams. So as you can see in Teams, you will see up to 9 tiles at a time, and the rest will show on the bottom. If you have something to say, you can speak, and Teams will automatically put you into one of the profiles that are showing in the 9 tiles. So in this corner here, you'll see there is a little box that looks like a texting box. If you hit that, it will show the sidebar so you can view the conversation. And if you want to type something, you can, and it will post it for you. You can also send all kinds of emojis and GIFs, whatever strikes your fancy for the conversation. But you're more than welcome to use the sidebar for conversation during the meeting. Also, here's your camera button if you would like to turn on or off your image. This is where you would do that. And here's where you would mind your mute with the microphone for you to turn yourself on and off. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The share screen button is here. We're going to ask that you avoid that button throughout the meeting. Julie will be using that exclusively, so please don't try to share your screen. Thank you. All right, so any questions on how to navigate Teams before we move on, since I know this may be a new environment to some of you? Okay. So as we move through the meeting, there'll be a lot of moments like that where we sort of take a pause that is a little bit elongated to try and give you time to provide feedback. Virtual meetings can be a little awkward that way, where we need to give a little bit of space for you to provide feedback, but please know we will be doing that. So as always, your thoughts during the meeting will be welcomed, and there's a few points in time where we're going to prompt you for that. When you do share your feedback, please identify yourself by your name and your organization when you speak, so that we're able to tell who is speaking. You can choose to share your image or not, but certainly you turn on your mic when you're speaking. It's a common mistake we've all been making, is speaking with our mute button on, but we definitely appreciate that you are trying to mind your mute. So we'll try to give space for people to provide their comments and to unmute yourselves. Now, the first order of business is to call the meeting to order, and normally I hand this over to David Young for roll call. Just point of order, David, is it still necessary to take a roll call, since during a virtual meeting we're able to tell who's joined?
As long as we have Cheryl taking attendance, I think that's fine.
Okay. It may, you know what, actually, I think it would be helpful to take roll call.
Is now joining.
I think it'd be helpful to take roll call so people can hear the names of those who have joined.
All right. All right. Gail Acuna. Dina Almasay.
Present.
Thank you. Julie Artiga.
Present.
Thank you. Tracy Cooper.
Present.
Thank you. Marla Urban Roseman.
Present.
Thank you. Nancy Farrenwald.
Present.
Thank you. Janice Hooper.
Present.
Thank you. Deborah Jones.
Present.
Thank you. Linda Lane.
Present.
Thank you. Pamela Lauer.
Present.
Thank you. Beth Merwin.
Present.
Thank you. Jonas New. Brenda Nichols. Beverly Skloss.
Present.
Thank you. Catherine Tart.
Here.
Thank you. Poldy Church.
Present.
Thank you. Tetsuya Ume.
Present.
Thank you. Sally Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Linda Yoder.
Present.
Thank you. Cindy Zolnerick.
Present.
Thank you. Julie Eklund.
Present.
Thank you. Stacy Silverman.
Present.
Thank you. Ginger Gossman. I know you're there. Ed Buchanan. And Emily Cormier.
Present.
All right, thank you. That concludes the roll call.
Thank you, David. And that was a little test run for all of us to turn our mute on and off. And I did not pass that test. But let's go ahead and move on to our first order of business, which is consideration and approval of the minutes from the June 15th meeting. So those were included in a draft some time ago, but also Cheryl sent them again this morning to make it easy for you to review them. So at this point, are there any questions or comments about the minutes that were sent from June 15? Okay, hearing none, I think that will act as a passive approval of the minutes. David, if that satisfies your need for approval?
Yes, that's
Then
fine. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, then we can move on. Next, we're going to go to agenda item 3, update on activities related to NSRP report preparation. I would like to hand the conversation off now to Julie Eklund to give us an update on where we stand now.
Thank you very much, Ginger, and it's wonderful to be with everyone today. We're all meeting a little later in the year than we had originally planned or hoped. So I just wanted to, Emily and I just wanted to fill you in on a couple of things related to that. We had some discussion at the last few meetings around defining a specific straw man. And after some discussion with our commissioner and in alignment with the direction of the agency, it was decided that it would be better for the coordinating board's partnership with both institutions and the legislature to bring forward ideas around which we've all built some consensus in this work group, rather than bringing forth an exact way of calculating a future NSRP program, which was more the direction of a straw man. So we made the determination to leave it more open in the report, again, but to bring forward the ideas around which we built consensus, and this will leave things more flexible for legislative direction. And now I'll hand it over to Emily, who also wanted to share. And Emily is the Assistant Commissioner for Funding at the agency, a role that she's been in since last March.
Good afternoon, this is Emily. So another item that we wanted to let you guys know about was that during the review of some of the data as different methodologies were considered, a data discrepancy was uncovered by our staff. The reporting and information used in the regular program for the NSRP has inadvertently included nursing graduates who are in online programs and residing outside of Texas. And as many of you know, the program is governed by a rider in the Appropriations Act, which requires those students to be excluded. So we are currently reviewing the data to understand it and working to make sure how we implement it for this year and in the future, that we have improved the checks and balances of the program and make it easier and more transparent for both us and institutions. And I really think that this is just another example of the complexity of the program for both institutions and the coordinating board. And I think that these discussions that this work group has been having over the past several months has been really necessary, to make this more transparent and to simplify the process for everyone moving forward. And Julie, I'll turn it back to you.
This is
Okay.
Cindy Zolniak. May I ask a clarifying question? I'm not sure if I heard, I just want to be sure I heard correctly. Were the program itself was outside of Texas, or the students were outside of Texas?
So the rider limitation is in regards to students being in an online program and residing outside of the state.
Correct. And did you find students that were residing outside of the state that were counted? Is that what you're saying?
We are still working to fully understand the data, but at this point, it does appear so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Hi, this is Catherine Tart.
Yes, go ahead.
So I think I'm confused with the first statement that the report should be open without specific guidelines from this committee. Could you, that seems kind of odd in the fact that it might be, I don't know, it just seems odd. It seems like then other things could be placed into the decision that may not have come from the committee, right? Or that it could be at the whim of the legislature, which it is anyway, probably, right? But I don't know. That kind of didn't strike me. Could you help me figure out that rationale? It was perplexing. I'm sorry that it is, but it just is.
Let me see if I can elaborate just
a
little bit, because I think you've all received a copy of the report, and you will see that there is definitely a level of detail in there that came from our discussions, and we're going to be walking through that in a moment as I walk you through the PowerPoint with the recommendations. I think the idea was that as we looked getting into such a detailed level of specificity where we began to go, it became clear that in terms of where the agency is wanting to have some flexibility, I think is a better word than openness, have some flexibility, but to still be as concrete as possible in terms of saying, here's where we found consensus as a group. Here's our recommendation in terms of what we think this new program should do and look like. I think that is where we landed, as opposed to here is a very specific straw man model that actually, makes a lot of decisions as it moves through, as opposed to these are the key components and attributes that the program should have. But some of those, more detailed decisions about it should go exactly this way or that way were not made. So I hope that helps. It's not saying that these recommendations are intended to be viewed as open. It's that these are the recommendations that we should be focusing on for the program. But in terms of getting down to something that was so specific in terms of, exact percentages and some of the types of things we were talking about, the decision was made that was too detailed, especially in this environment, in terms of just wanting to make sure we had some flexibility on both sides. Was that helpful, I hope?
Yes, I'm open to listening, definitely, but and I know it's hard to be so specific.
Is now exiting.
Gosh, poor thing. But I just wanted to bring that up as a question.
We appreciate it.
Any additional questions before we move on? Okay, well, on that note, the fourth agenda item is to consider the draft recommendations as of ways to address the state's nursing shortage. I'm sorry, did someone ask a question?
That might have been me, Ginger. I was moving my phone.
Okay. Okay, well, as a reward for moving your phone, I'm going to hand things off to you to go through the PowerPoint.
Okay, wonderful. I'll try to keep the background noise down. Thank you, and hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint. One thing people might not have understood, of course, this is an open meeting, as all of ours are. Everyone on the work group has joined into the Teams call, but we're actually broadcasting this call from the coordinating board through our regular YouTube channels, and that's for the folks who wanted to listen in. So I'm hoping that everyone is able to see the PowerPoint. The way these slides are structured is that first I have a slide sort of addressing the challenges that we focused on, and then several slides which lay out the recommendations and the ideas to explore that you find in the draft report. And it really does follow along with the executive summary. So it should be something that you'll be able to follow along with in the report draft itself. So let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. Hopefully you're all seeing a slide with challenges. And these are some of the core challenges around which we had agreement, and you'll see around which some of our components for program attributes are designed for a redesign. But in terms of the challenges, we certainly called out the complexity of the program, which was something we all talked about frequently in our meetings. The challenges with advancing and returning funds in the over and under 70 subprograms, challenges around budgeting and using the funds because the funding is not consistent and predictable. We talked about hiring and keeping qualified instructors and how that can certainly be a challenge right now and has been throughout the time of the nursing shortage reduction program. And then also issues with finding clinical space and facilities. And of course, it's hard to grow a program when those are challenges. So Ginger?
Yes, thank you. I had to unmind my mute. I just want to check in with everyone to see if this is an accurate reflection of the challenges as we've discussed them. Okay, hearing none, I think we can move on, Julie.
Okay, so this is moving into the recommendations. First, we started with what attributes a redesigned NSRP program should have. And these are, of course, areas where we found agreement within the work group. Certainly that the program needs to be easier to understand and to administer, needs more consistent and predictable funding, that initial licensure nurses are prioritized, but RN to BSN nurses are included, and that one or more measures of quality is included. And that's it for the first slide.
This is Catherine Tart. It seemed like we talked, maybe it's in the first bullet, this would be a mechanism, but we talked about having a designated timeline.
And actually, you'll see that come up in
Okay.
our recommendations or something similar, and you'll
Sure.
have to let me know if you think we've characterized that well. But we do have something coming around schedules and timelines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good point. And that may be in the, I believe that's in the components section, which we're going to come to next. I'll give everyone a moment in case there's any other feedback. And one thing I will add as we're going through this, that we're certainly going to allow opportunity for everyone to send comments back. Of course, you've all received the draft of the report, and so well, we're going to, of course, we're on a fairly tight timeline, to say the least, in terms of getting to our board meeting, but we're going to allow everyone until the end of the day, Wednesday, to give us, also to have the opportunity to give us feedback. So certainly feel free to be taking notes as we move forward. The one other thing I'll mention, Ginger, is I am not able to see chat, so please let me know if there's something there that would be helpful for me to address.
Okay, I will let you know. And so far, there is not anything in the chat.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to move on to recommendations for, again, redesigning the programs. So we talked about attributes. Now we're going to have what the components would look like. This is on 2 slides, so I'll work through both slides and then we'll have an opportunity for feedback. So one thing that we spent a lot of time talking about was having one program instead of 3 different programs, to base the program on the increase in the number of nursing graduates, and then thinking about awarding institutions grants once they've met the criteria for increases. So this addresses one of the challenges in terms of the money that's advanced. So there wouldn't be any return funds except in the case that if the money was spent on a non-qualifying expenditure or wasn't spent during a designated designated time frame. Also to include RN to BSN, and we talked a lot in the group about this being a pathway for nursing faculty, but I think there was strong agreement that the RN to BSN funding should be limited to ensure that initial licensure nurses are strongly prioritized. And then we talked about including weighting for degrees earned that lead to instructional credentials. So additional weighting, of course. And we talked quite a bit about focusing on quality. Now the NCLEX pass rates were mentioned the most in terms of this discussion. And I will add that I received some written comments from Brenda Nichols this morning, who was unfortunately wasn't going to be able to join us this afternoon, and she did emphasize this as well. Another component would be to set maximum awards overall per nurse or nurse instructor, and then also to require a report submission at the end of the grant period. And this is one thing I also wanted to bring up because Brenda made a comment, and we wanted to get a little bit of feedback from the group on this, and because it is challenging in terms of those yearly reports, I think in terms of some of the administrative aspects, and we know some of that came up, but she was suggesting something more frequent than just requiring at the end of the grant period. So it would be helpful to know how others view this, if some kind of a streamlined report during the grant period would be appropriate, or if people feel that this it is better to have a required report at the end of the time. So those are the components, and again, feel free to comment on any that I just brought forward.
This is Marla Urban Roseman. I didn't know if you just wanted us to hop on or raise our hand, but in terms of submitting a report, I think at the end of the grant period would be fine. I think during the grant period would be much more confusing and not as helpful, but definitely at the end of the grant period, I would, I'd be willing to do that. Great.
And any other comments on that or any of the other components?
So this is Catherine I'm sorry, I hope I'm not talking too much. The maximum award, that's going to be based obviously on the number of people who apply and the number of students, correct? So
yeah, that's one of the in terms of setting a maximum award.
Yes, ma'am.
Decisions would need to be made, I think, about whether, if something was going to roll over. But it is something that I know was challenging with the prior. There were some sort of general guidelines set there. But the idea being that if you had a year with a very minimal increases, right, would it be appropriate to just divide up a very large amount of money? I mean, we've always seen strong increases. We hope that continues. But it felt appropriate, and especially thinking about some of the discussions we had earlier, to think about having a maximum award. Again, we didn't want to say what it should be, but happy to get feedback from others, and maybe that's something that needs to be determined when there is a little more detail, but we felt like it was a component that we should bring forth.
I feel like when we set the maximum award before, I think it was like 10,000. And that was based on what the faculty believed it costs to admit a student. So I think there was some rationale for those numbers, although I don't know if we've ever always reached that maximum. But I think there was logic behind the maximum, and so I would just
we could add something that would indicate, that it should be, based on, some kind of logical rationale.
Are there other people out there that remember that?
This is Cindy Zolnarek. When the program was developed, and I just checked this because I was talking with a reporter the other day, it was thought that to produce a pre-licensure grad, it took about $10,000 a year. So for BSN programs that may have 2 years of the nursing education component, that would be $20,000 over those 2 years. And for ADN programs that may have the 1 year, it would be $10,000. So that's where that number came from.
Okay, good. So I was on the right track with those.
Yes. Now, we didn't always get when the most we ever got was 44 million, and then now we're getting 20 million. So there may not be that amount to award, but that was the maximum amount.
That's helpful. One thing I know the group also I think we discussed at one point was whether you would have maybe a larger amount for nursing instructors to try to incentivize institutions to build those pipelines for nursing instructors. So that's certainly something else that could be built in. This is phrased as for each type of graduate, so it certainly is phrased in a way that would allow that type of flexibility.
And this is where, and I may be ahead of myself here, but I'm wondering if everything is in one bucket, because before pre-licensure, students were prioritized because they came into a separate bucket, so that those funds were kind of protected for that type of graduate. And only if those dollars weren't expended did they go into that third bucket, which was for all graduates. So that amount per graduate varied the greatest. If they're all in one bucket, how do you prioritize graduates? And I may be ahead of the presentation, but I do have that question in mind.
That's a good question. And actually, when we were getting very detailed and thinking about a straw man, we were, you all might recall we had conversations around should there be a percentage that no more than this amount could go to, for example, RN to BSN. So there were certainly discussions around that. I think this is crafted and I believe at one point in the report that is mentioned, but this is crafted in a way that would allow that to be flexible, whether it's 25% or 15% or addressed in another way, half the amount for an initial licensure than RN to BSN. We talked about those types of things. I think it was clear everyone thought there should definitely be a differentiation. If you feel like we need a little more detail here in the components, we could certainly do that. But it would be challenging to want to pinpoint that and still maintain some of the flexibility that we were talking about. We can certainly emphasize it that, and I think you'll see that as we move through that, and that prioritization of the initial licensure and the nurse instructors.
This is Linda Lane with Texas Tech. I was just wondering, since we're talking about it, when you talk about set an award for each type of graduate, would we actually have, could graduation growth be counted for each type of graduate instead of all bundled together to focus on the initial licensure program and the I'm just saying that would be a way. If you put it all together and everything counts, it's hard when you're really growing your initial program and you get overshadowed by another one growing the RN to BSN program. Is there a way that the growth could be based on the type of graduate instead of all lumped together?
Thank you, Linda. That's a really good comment. And I think our intention was, when we were thinking about going from 3 programs or 3 sub-programs to 1, the intention was not that all graduates should be treated equally. And certainly the recommendation that you will see and have heard that initial licensure and instructors be prioritized would suggest that there would be a difference in how the growth in different graduates would be treated. But we certainly, if everyone agrees, can make sure that's very, very clear in the report. But that's certainly been the consensus at other meetings, that we should be prioritizing growth for the initial licensure and instructors.
Okay.
And feel free. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was through. I was just saying thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Any additional thoughts before we move on? Okay.
All right, and I would add, if others agree, again, please feel free to send those written comments to us by Wednesday. It'll help us to see the feedback from everyone. Now, this is the portion where we tried to characterize what attributes should remain constant. Again, tried to characterize our discussions with all of you about what seems to be working. Of course, we left in that the programs should apply every biennium to participate, and a lot of this, of course, is around the legislative schedule. We added in that institutions on probation aren't allowed to participate. We didn't put in the report that it was probation with the Texas Board of Nursing, and that was our oversight. I apologize for that. We will add that into the report, that when we said on probation, we meant on probation with the Board of Nursing, and of course that is currently the case right now, that those institutions are not allowed to participate. That institutions have discretion in terms of how they spend the funds, so something very similar in terms of what we have now, that it's fairly open in terms of what's allowable, as long as it's used to reduce the funds are used to reduce the nursing shortage, used for the nursing programs in various ways. And then that and I think, contribute to program goals is a good way to put that, that the awards must supplement the current nursing program funding. That, I think, is an important point to make, and you all made that frequently in our meetings, that this is not to replace existing funding. This is additional funding to grow the programs and grow the number of graduates. And then we would maintain our current subject to audit requirements. Okay, and then I'll stop here.
Is this an accurate reflection of our previous discussions?
So this is Catherine Tardigan. So some of the issues that we've seen around, so the third bullet, institutions having discretion. So do we mean the institutions, so the provosts, or do we mean the nursing programs? This is a piece in an area that I believe there are still some issues floating around about. So just wanted to draw your attention to that word and its meaning.
Thank you for raising that, because I think there was some nuance to the conversations that may not be expressed here. Certainly to want to, I think the intention, and we felt this from you, that to be able to continue to have that flexibility to use the funds that go to program goals. But I do remember we had some conversations about who should be deciding. We could certainly include nursing programs here in terms of a recommendation, in terms of the programs would have discretion. Would that be, and again, it would be helpful to have feedback from everyone. I don't know if that's something that would work in terms of the structure of your institutions, or if it's best to leave it as is.
Julie, in the chat, a few others are concurring with Catherine's comment.
Okay.
This is Marla Urban Roseman, and I did want to concur with Catherine, is that I heard from other deans and directors that the funds were, I don't want to see taken away from them, but I guess that's accurate in some institutions, that the funds were taken from them and told how they were going to be spent, instead of the nursing deans and directors who have the most knowledge about their programs having control. They did not have control of those. So I think that is a valid point that Catherine was making.
Okay.
Julie, I just want to share a couple, there's
Yes,
some
please
comments coming up in the chat bot. I'm going to share those with you. So Ume has commented, you know, I think we were going to plan on gathering information about how colleges and universities are spending the funds. And then Linda Lane said, yes, their nursing program should have the discretion to spend the funds, not the institution. And Nina Almasi said she agrees. It's good to further clarify, as Dr. Tart mentioned.
Thank you. And I will add that we did actually provide some information back, and I think that's in the appendix in terms of what the institutions, what the programs reported to us in terms of spending the funds. And I do hear what becoming a consensus, at least for those who have weighed in terms of wanting to ensure that the message is that the nursing program should have some discretion in terms of the funds. And again, I'll ask everyone if they could provide that information, and that's something we'll certainly take a look at in terms of as we work through your comments from today. So again, if others would like to comment when they send back final comments, it would be helpful to hear from everyone on this. And again, it is something that's come up, and I think we were thinking in terms of what's allowable and not necessarily, you know, for the institutions and programs to do, and not necessarily who is making the decision. So it's helpful to hear the concern on your part on what's happening on your end with that.
You know, in this Catherine Tart again, in our application, we sign it, right? So the grant or the report's always signed by the director. And so I think that gives a level of security that they're totally involved with the funding. But I think the wording just needs to be very clear. You know, the institution owns everything anyway. I understand that, but
right.
But this funding should not be used, you know, for other things outside of the nursing intention.
Yeah, and I hope that it's clear that the expenditures need to contribute to program goals, but you're saying the intention of the leadership in the nursing program and the deans. That I think that's what I'm hearing is people also want to make sure it's clear that the nursing program should have a say in how those will be used to contribute to the program goals. Is that
right? So you get a grant from HRSA or wherever. I mean, you have to use the funding to what it's used for. You can't be moving the funding around. So, and we hear that this is continuing to happen. So is just there a way within the structure of how this funding is going to be appropriated that it could be made very clear that something of that nature just could not occur. It has to be in the nursing program. It just has to be very clear, because I don't know if it's not clear or they think they can do what they want, but I have to bring it up. I mean, it's a moral obligation.
No, thank you. I'm very glad you did, and maybe we could word it in terms of structure the program in a way such that the nursing deans or that the nursing program is responsible for decisions, around expenditures, which must contribute to program goals, or, something along those lines. As does that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That sounds.
I don't know. This is Jan Hooper from the board. I don't know if this helps you from another agency, but we do have a rule that the program director has the authority to run the program, including the budget, including hiring and firing. So if we can help you out at all with that rule, we'll be glad to.
Oh, well, that is very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, that seems like it's a change that we can certainly make, in which case, maybe this recommendation belongs in not under attributes that should remain constant, but components in the component section for redesign for the components that we believe the program should have moving forward. Okay, so I'm gonna, oops, I didn't mean to jump ahead. All right, anything else on the remaining constant? All right. And then in terms of the next section, these are attributes that should be considered. So these were areas where we felt like we wanted to be sure that they were considered in any decisions about the nursing program. But we didn't feel like we're in a position to say this must happen, but I think these are critical components, again, for anyone to be thinking about. And the first one is calculating based on a 2 or 3 year rolling average, or to find another methodology, determine a methodology to smooth increases and enhance predictability. So just to go year from year to year can cause some challenges if you're just looking at increases. So we felt like including this was important, but it can be challenging. It can be a challenging discussion because 3 years might include more stability, but also it's not as responsive, it's older data. 2 years maybe a little bit less so. So we wanted to make sure to include this as something to be considered. And then here is where you'll see the language around designing a schedule, which really goes into that timeline. And I think we can certainly add language about a timeline, but a schedule that allows for certified data to be used. Oh, and we do have a timeline here, I'm sorry, and ensure that institutions receive a clear timeline of when applications will be distributed, data submitted and certified, and awards made. We realize that's something that is needed, and certainly it's something we have tried to provide information, but I think we haven't done it in a very clear timeline-focused way, and that was a message that we certainly received from the work group, and we appreciated. So those are our attributes again, or that should be considered moving forward.
Does this look accurate to everyone as a reflection of prior conversations? And also, Julie, we have received a few affirmations regarding your conversation with Dr. Tart a few moments ago in the chat.
Oh, wonderful.
So that was an excellent conversation.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, it looks like everyone, well, not everyone, those who are responding in the chat are saying that, yes, this is an accurate reflection of conversations. So
great.
I think you can move on.
All right, thank you. And so now we're going to move into additional ideas for reducing the nursing shortage. So of course, all of you probably recall that Dr. Tim Henderson, who's the national expert that we found on healthcare policy, did an environmental scan of other states to find what they were doing to address nursing shortages in their states. Gave us a very nice report, which we have summarized at the back in the appendix. So it is available for those folks looking at the report. But we had several of you joined work groups, or I should say sub-work groups, to talk about some of the ideas, to bring some ideas forward. So here is where we tried to bring them forward. We didn't specifically, we don't specifically call them recommendations. We're calling them ideas. I think they're, again, a little less fleshed out than what we're seeing in terms of the program, the current program redesign, the slides we just went through. And with my sense in talking to others at the coordinating board who have been involved in this process, that everyone's top priority is to focus on really redesigning the current program to make it as effective and streamlined as possible, but that also these are important ideas to consider and put forward, and a lot of time did go into looking at some of these other things. So we've got 2 pages looking at some of these ideas that we explored. One key focus was on hiring more instructors, and there was a lot of conversation around that. I think the most popular idea that came up had to do with looking at regional nursing instructor salaries, and thinking about ways to bring up the lower salaries in a region if those are found. And this was a recommendation that came from another state. And then there was also recommendations that sort of the grow your own partnership concept, where programs target current students as potential future instructors and try to support them. We also had ideas come up, such as offering incentives for nurse practitioners to commit to teaching at least part-time. And I know some of the most recent data that we've seen suggests that we may have an oversupply of nurse practitioners in the future. We don't right now. We also discussed some different avenues for nursing faculty to gain professional development and skills updates. So this is the slide that focuses on instruction.
This is Linda Yoder. I would say we need to expand bullet number 3 to not just focus on nurse practitioners, but to offer incentives for, we could say, advanced practice nurses who commit to teaching at least part-time. Because if we just focus on nurse practitioners, we're limiting that, I believe.
We could certainly rephrase that. Yes, Cindy.
I would question, I did put something in the chat, but I'm wondering why we would incentivize nurse practitioners or APRNs greater than we would want any qualified nurse with a graduate degree to teach. I think there may be an automatic market. I guess the market may actually facilitate nurse practitioners going into faculty roles. So I'm not sure that when you have, limited dollars, if that's the place to put the incentive. If market forces will drive it on their own.
Thank you.
And this is Linda Yoder again. I agree with Cindy completely.
We can certainly change that to say offer incentives for advanced practice nurses, and then we could do a for example, or we could leave off the specifically nurse practitioners.
Or maybe we could say nurses with graduate degrees, because, if you're trying to find somebody to teach leadership, for example, it might be a nurse with a graduate degree who is not an APRN.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. And I think, again, that maybe ties into what all of this section is about, is to find ways to graduate and hire more instructors. But, specifically, we can certainly change that. It seems like it is not broad enough in this case. So thank you for that feedback.
And Julie, in the chat, there's some consensus around graduate. Catherine made a comment about graduate prepared nurses, and there's some consensus around there.
Thank you. That's very helpful. We can go ahead and make that adjustment. All right. Well, I'm going to, Ginger, anything else from the chat?
Catherine just clarified, suggesting nurses with graduate degree in nursing.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that. Thank you. And then I've moved on to the next slide in terms of our additional ideas. In terms of increasing initial licensure nurses, we discussed funds for scholarships, tuition discounts, looking at loan repayment programs that might be structured differently, as well as career pathway programs. There was something that had come up in another state about tax credit, but at the time we did discuss it, there were more folks who felt like that might be challenging for Texas rather than not. But that was a comment that Brenda made I wanted to bring in. But that is the reason it's not included here, is based on looking at some of our survey results when we surveyed all of you about the different initiatives. What we do have here related to clinical site development includes options for funding non-traditional approaches. And if you all might recall that we looked at approaches from as far away as Australia. I know there were some ideas there that kind of floated to the top, and as close as Del Mar College, who's doing an interesting pilot. And we do have a little bit more detail in the report body itself about some of these types of things that we looked at. But again, the focus being on some of these non-traditional sites and programs, and also a focus on funding pilot programs that provide preceptor development. In fact, I think that's specifically what Del Mar is doing. So that's what we've brought together again at the high level in the executive summary for the additional ideas.
This is Beth Merwin with UT Arlington. I think we should try to expand and give more examples on clinical site development, including simulations. I would like us to have a recommendation of funding for demonstration projects and for the development of innovative simulations that could be disseminated and shared among schools. We're really challenged now with COVID and to expand our simulations, and there wasn't a lot of time to plan for that expansion. And I think faculty are doing a lot of creative, good work, but I believe that it could be improved with some funding. And I think a call for some grant funding would bring some creative ideas and some needed resources. I also think there have been some amount of advocacy for schools working with both non-traditional and traditional clinical sites to find different ways to provide clinical experiences for our students. And I think if that could be supported by some demonstration funds, some evaluation for something to be implemented, we would make more progress faster. And the pilot programs for preceptor development, I think we could do a lot more across the state in preceptor development, but it would go faster if there was some funding that could be competitively awarded for that. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful. We can certainly, I think especially we understand our landscape is different now than our programs were in when all of these discussions started, and thinking about the importance of simulations, of demonstration projects, that type of thing. If everyone could share in the chat if they feel like that would be appropriate, at least certainly to have a high level bullet around that. I'm not sure that there's time in terms of getting into a great deal of specifics, but it absolutely is something it feels like it's important to include if you all agree. Again, we've got a different environment that we're all working and living in now as a result of COVID, and those simulations I know have become even more important for all of you.
Yes,
This is
go ahead. I was just going to tell Julie there is some consensus around this in the chat.
Thank you. This is Poldy Church. I'm with the University of St. Thomas in Houston. And I wanted to add in reference to this last set of bullets, we may want to think too about identifying that some of this work should be done in conjunction with clinical partners, since I think, they're really important stakeholders in how we move in this development. And we're seeing things bubble up, for example, agencies getting ready to at least floating the idea of charging fees for student placement. So we can see, things are shifting in terms of their sense of the demands on them and the resources they need. So I think we might be wise to think about, encourage partnership whenever, I know that's been done in the past, but encouraging that in initiatives like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Another good comment, good suggestion.
And Julie, in the chat, others have been suggesting an innovation fund versus NSRP. So there's people who seem to be liking the idea of an innovation grant program.
Thank you. Well, it was certainly some of the innovative ideas that came up from out of states that I think attracted attention in terms of our work group. I think a lot of the more traditional things our state was doing already, quite frankly, in terms of what was reviewed. So that's certainly in line with the types of ideas that were bubbling up when we were meeting earlier, and also reviewing the national scan.
So Cindy was clarifying for me that the Nursing Innovation Grant is funded by the tobacco lawsuit funds, and it's dedicated to nursing education. So this may be an opportunity.
Yes, and this might be something that Stacy Silverman, Dr. Silverman, could speak to, because her area at the coordinating board does handle some of our other funds for nursing, and so certainly wanting to make sure we consider what's already available. Stacy, I don't know if you're able to provide a little background on the innovation grants.
Sure. So for several years, we've funded some really trying to develop simulation in across the state for nursing programs. I think an awful lot of you have been recipients of those simulation awards. Currently, I believe I have to see if it's actually out yet or not, but we're focused on trying to help with the institutions as they work through this COVID process. So if we haven't released it yet, and I'm trying to look on our website right now, we'll be releasing that soon. It's either routing or soon to be posted. So I encourage you all to take a look at our website. You'll also get notices through our Gov delivery system. So if you get regular notices from us, you'll be getting one soon, so that you won't miss that. Oh, somebody says it was released. Great. So it's out there. So please go ahead and work on that, and we'll be moving that along as well. Sometimes things come by me and I don't know where they are in the process, unfortunately.
So, and Stacy, maybe you can assist us as we sit down and develop out some of these ideas for the demonstration projects, the innovative simulations, those types of things, and we'll make sure that we are these recommendations are in line with sort of what's already available, but what might be some new avenues to explore.
Always happy to help. For sure. Oh no, so the application period's already closed. Well, I hope that we got lots of applications in. So sorry about that, you all. I'm looking at our website.
Still, it presents an exciting opportunity for exploring how to improve the curriculum that you've been discussing here, or to deliver it in a different way.
Yes.
So this is your last slide, is that correct, Julie?
That's correct, yes.
Are there any other comments on any of this presentation? If you'd like for us to go back to different slides, we can. We want to make sure we afford every opportunity for you to provide comments in today's meeting on what's in the report. We're definitely wanting to make sure that what we've presented is accurate. Very much appreciate all the feedback so far. But again, if you have any other thoughts, we would very much appreciate it.
Ginger, this is Marla Urban Roseman. I think this is consistent with what our past meetings, what we've come up with, and also the summary that we got earlier that I read. I think that you've done a good job in capturing it.
Thank you.
So I'll just let the group know, this is Stacy again, that awards will be announced in mid-November. So at least that's an accurate statement.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stacy.
Sure.
And I will add, Ginger, that there, on some of these items, there is a little more detail in the body of the report than what was included in the executive summary. So if there's a particular area, if you didn't have the opportunity to get through the full report, which isn't too long, but I know everyone's busy and there wasn't as much time as we would have liked to look at it. So do feel free to find those sections and take a look. And again, let us know if you have any comments.
I just wanted to let you know that Jan Hooper said this is an excellent report. I think that's very, very nice to hear, and very much, again, appreciate everyone's feedback, especially staff who've worked very hard on this. But it couldn't have been done without you and your support and the information that you helped us obtain. Just want to, again, pause for any additional comments. Julie, you might consider stopping sharing your screen so you can participate.
Sure, I will.
See the chat.
Yes. If no one needs to call out any particular slides, that's a good idea, and we can all be back on screen.
And I'll keep posting the reminder that your comments there is still time for you to supply comments to us. We are always happy to hear from you.
And Ginger, for those who are interested, this will be presented at our IDEA committee, which is a board committee, and it'll be on Wednesday, October 21st. And we will be posting a copy of the final report prior to that committee meeting.
What was the date on that, Julie?
It's, I believe, October 21st, which is a Wednesday.
And I have in my notes that we'll let everyone know when those materials are posted.
Yes, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Well, that does conclude our agenda. Again, we just want to give you a really heartfelt thank you for all of your time and effort. I think we've had some really rich conversations over the last few months, and you all are not just consistent champions and advocates for this work, but also you've taken a lot of your time out of your schedules during a very unusual time in our lives. And so the fact that you've done that to contribute to this work is really just outstanding from our perspective. The state of Texas thanks you and continues to thank you for your work. So this is our final meeting. Again, just want to say your comments remain welcome through the end of business on Wednesday. If there's anything else you need from us, you know how to reach out to us, to Julie or to David or to Emily. Obviously, Stacy, if you need Stacy's help, we're all here. And Linda, did you want to say something?
This is Linda Yoder. I was wondering if we'll be getting a copy of the final report, if you'll be sending it out to us, or we just need to keep checking the website.
I think we could do either. I think once it's posted, we'd also be happy to send it out and share it with the group.
That would be great. Thank you.
That would be easier than you having to find where it is on our website. So we're happy to do that for you.
Thank you so much.
And I have a clarifying two questions. One, we don't vote on this at all. There's nothing saying that this is the draft that this group moves forward with. And then secondly, who will be the ones presenting it at the IDEA meeting on the 21st? Will that be you, Ginger, or Dr. Ekman, or how does that go? Julie will?
Julie will be presenting.
Okay, that's clarified.
Yeah, and And I will say, I'll be presenting, I plan to present the PowerPoint that you've seen, you know, of course, we'll update with the changes that we plan to make for the report. I will have a couple of additional slides about process, sort of letting the board members know the process that the group went through. In terms of voting, the report itself comes from it's a coordinating board recommendation. It's not a work group, but we absolutely, you know, if anyone has any concerns that, you know, they feel strongly about, please do express those when you send comments. And certainly now, if there's any sense that there's something that we haven't had an opportunity to discuss and to hear your feedback, because it's absolutely our intention for this report to reflect the very good work that this work group has done over the last year. So if there's a sense that that's not the case, please do let us know, and we will be happy to hear your feedback. Again, we couldn't have done this without you. I know I learned a great deal from all of you and have a much better understanding not only about nursing and the issues in general, but you know, I think we all came to understand the program better and some of its complexities by going through this process. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, everyone, again, that concludes our agenda for today. Your time is so much appreciated. We just can't express it. So one thank you that we'll give you is we'll give you back some time today. So thanks, everyone, and please take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Julie
is now exiting.